And welcome back to this Dialogue Web Extra. I'm Marcia Franklin. We've been talking about the revolution in Egypt, why it happened, and its importance to the United States. But I want to talk a little bit more about the importance to the region, because as we speak right now, we're seeing strife in Bahrain, we're seeing almost outright war in Libya, and distress in other parts of the region. Do you see this situation in Egypt as being kind of a tipping point in this part of the world? Do you think that it will spread, or do you think these other regimes will be able to tamp down? And I'm looking at Ahmed right now.
Oh, very well, because in Egypt, people all over in the Arab world look at Egypt as a leader. It has a national position, and unfortunately, in the last 30 years, Egypt was deprived of this leadership for the Arab world. But the Arabs in general just look at Egypt as a model, so they have to set their example. And at the same time, they are suffering in their countries, and they need to do what the Egyptians do. Even if you watch these revolutions everywhere, you'll find them just repeating the same mottos for the Egyptian revolution, the same thing.
But they may not be in the same kind of countries that have a military that refuses to fire on them. I mean,
I think the relationships may be entirely different. And as we've seen in Libya, where the population got weapons early on, there's much more likelihood of this force on force.
Well, and it's bringing in mercenaries too from other regions.
Exactly.
So Dr. Woolery, what do you think about this, the importance of what happened in Egypt as having a ripple effect in the region?
I think it's going to ripple for quite a while. I mean, you can see the same sorts of issues spreading, and the people in this region have been ruled by dictators and monarchs for a really long time, many of them supported by the U.S. And so they're seeing this opportunity. It's been amazing just to see some of my Egyptian friends say, now we're going to have democracy, and we might make mistakes, but when we make mistakes, we'll fix them, we can do something. And that idea that you can want something and do something about it, it's hard to stop that desire. And so I think this is going to present a challenge to all of these leaders in the region to either reform and do it quickly and dramatically, or else, face the same kind of instability that Egypt has faced.
And do you think that there'll be democratic reforms, or do I hate to keep harping on this point, but you can get another autocratic regime that replaces one that you don't like if you're not careful. So.
That's right, and that often does happen. I mean, you could end up having the same kind of problems with another military dictator taking over in these places. But I think what happened in Egypt is that people began to say, so if another autocratic leader comes out, we're going to do something about it. And this is presenting issues for the people in the Middle East, certainly for American foreign policy, and it's going to be a while before this calms down.
Yeah, it's been hard, I think, for President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton to kind of know what to say and when to say it. Because, if you step in too much and things go wrong, then you can be blamed. It's a hard diplomatic line, I think, to follow. And of course, Mubarak has been our ally. So, it seemed to be in the beginning there was a little bit of confusion about, what do we want to say here? Because this is somebody that we support, again, with $2 billion a year.
And I think to some extent, though, President Obama's use of the term legacy in referring to Mubarak may have, in fact, made him think bigger picture. He has stepped aside, but his basic establishment is still there to make an orderly transition. But there's a lot of other leaders in the region that they don't care about their legacy. They care about being in power, and they will do anything that they have to do to maintain that power, whether it's mukhabarat or whatever else.
So you think potentially Mubarak was convinced that he would want his legacy to not be one of violence?
It was inevitable, and I think he knew that handing over the reins of the presidency to his son was absolutely not going to be acceptable.
It never will be acceptable at this time.
Now, one thing I want to bring up is Iran, and there's started to be some articles about this, some commentary. We're talking about the countries we're talking about right now are Sunni. Iran is Shia. Many people have made the point that Iran is benefiting quite a bit from this instability in the Sunni world, and that Saudi Arabia is nervous and other countries are nervous. Iran just sent 2 ships through the Suez Canal for the first time since 1979. Israel was made very nervous by this. What do you think, I'll start with you, Dr. Woolery, the benefit if any, to Iran is of this increasing instability in the Arab world?
Well, you know, I'm sure it's unintentional, but we've removed a lot of Iran's rivals. I mean, Afghanistan on one side, Iraq on the other side. So, in a sense, what's happened in U.S. foreign policy, and even what's happening right now, is that American power in the region, unless we find a way to increase our influence with these hopefully democratic governments, Iran's power is increasing and ours is decreasing. You look at Hezbollah in Lebanon gaining power. You've got in Bahrain, of course, they were originally in Persia, so you've got the Shiites there. I mean, you've got a lot of American allies weakening and a lot of Iranian influence on growing. And so it's a big issue.
Yeah, as a military person, do you agree? Former military?
I do. I think if you ask the Egyptian military who the biggest threat in the region, they won't say it's Israel, it's Iran. You know, what are we going to do with Iran? And while it could be argued that you said earlier, Doctor, about the $1.3 billion a year buying peace, it's actually buying us influence and access with a friendly government who is armed with weapons that we're compatible with to be an ally in the region. And the stability of the Egyptian military to keep the Suez Canal open and keep the wheat and the oil passing through that region is critical. So the military in Egypt is playing a vital role, and as long as that stays stable, I think it'll be tremendously important to the region.
Do you foresee a situation where Saudi Arabia could change because of this?
Because what's happening in Egypt?
Yes, another ally of ours, but certainly a situation where there are some people there that feel repressed.
I lived in Saudi Arabia for 6 years, but you know, still the economic situation in Saudi Arabia for most of the people, it's okay. I think just usually in some countries people come to revolt when it has to do or touch their basic needs to some extent. In spite of that, I could see some people are not satisfied for a while with the current situation in Saudi Arabia, but they cannot find the channels to express their views there.
That's interesting. As we close, Dr. Willery, we have some pictures that you sent of your time in Egypt. Tell us a little bit about what you enjoyed so much about living there and why you stay in touch with your students and why you were back as recently as December, I believe, taking some professors there to visit Egypt. What is your close connection with that country?
Well, you know, the Arabs in general, and certainly Egyptians, are generous people, and the culture there is one that they are very, very welcoming. And I tell people this, and it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but in 3 years of living in and traveling throughout the Middle East, I never once had somebody insult me because I was an American. I had people show me and my family and my children kindness and generosity, and I continue to receive that from people and from friends there, concerned about my life and the life of my family. And it was wonderful to go back in December, and I was in a city of 18 million, but everywhere I went, I knew people and had friends with people, and it was a really marvelous thing. The Egyptian people are remarkable, and unfortunately, you know, in America, we've kind of lumped all Arabs and Muslims with somebody like Osama bin Laden, who, of course, is not a representative of of people in that area of the world.
We've got a photo. I wonder if we can put it up. We've got a photo of some men holding your baby in their arms. I love this photo, and I love the story behind it. I wonder if our graphics person can call it up. But basically, one of your children was born in Egypt and born so quickly at your home that there wasn't any time to get to the hospital and no scale to weigh her. So what did you do? What does this picture represent?
Well, my wife, the next morning, I mean, our daughter was less than 24 hours old. She said, we need to know how much our daughter weighs. And I said, well, you know, it's no big deal. And she said, no, we need to know. We know it for all of our children. And so I said, what do you want me to do? She said, well, take her down to the supermarket and weigh her on the fruit weigher. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. But we did it. We took her down there and weighed her on the weigher. And in fact, we printed out the little scan thing, you know, for it. We treated her like she was a strawberry because she was kind of pink. And so we actually have that in her little baby book, the little scan. And then the guys in the grocery store, you know, we just as I said about Arab culture, you know everybody, and so we knew all these guys, and so they held her, and they were so gentle and careful with her, and I actually printed out this picture for each of them, and they were so proud of it. They were just, they loved it, and they always asked after her. Her name is Samara, which is an Egyptian name. They'd always ask how she was, and showed her a lot of love and affection because she was one of them.
And you're having a similar experience, although not babies being born here, but you're enjoying your experience in Idaho and with American culture.
I wrote my reaction when they saw the support banner to the math students and my faculty members. I said, I love America and American people. And every day I stay here, this affiliation with American people increases. And that's why this is part of this program that I like, and I hope it continues the relationship between peoples of the world. It changes a lot of attitude and makes miracles.
Well, thank you. All three of you are representative of that cross-cultural spirit, and I appreciate you being here, staying here for this Dialogue Web Extra on the revolution in Egypt. I'm Marcia Franklin. Thanks for tuning in.